Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, everyone. Again, this is Christina, and you're watching Black Tea News. And today we're going to be talking about quite a bit of things. President Trump has announced that he's going to be suing Facebook and all the big tech companies, which no surprise because they did him dirty. They just absolutely did him dirty. And out of all the tweets he had over the years, just like when they decided to ban him and the reasons that they gave, specifically Twitter, was just so stupid. It was unbelievable. They're like, even him saying that he wasn't going to be at the inauguration could have signaled people that it would be safe to attack. And I'm like, I don't think they were thinking that. But if there's a psycho out there who thought that, I guess you put that in their head. It was just because, sometimes he goes hard at people and has in the past and will again. But the reasons why Twitter gave when they decided to get rid of Trump was obviously political and suspect, and they just did not have good excuses and good enough reasons. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to be talking about surprise critical race theory again. Specifically, I don't want to talk about this every day, but CNN did an incredible story on it, and I'm going to have to do a full react video because it's just so silly. But they want to play off like the parents are so terrified for no reason, and then they gave in the story they covered things, and I don't know, that obviously affirm the fears of the parents, but they're so biased they can't even understand that yeah, you just reaffirmed all my fears. So I'm gonna play a few clips of that. It's an 8-minute long piece, so you're gonna have to either go watch that yourself or wait for me to do the react, which I will probably film depending on how long I go today, as soon as I finish this broadcast, because it's just an incredible video. I'm also going to talk about, did you guys know that Candace Owens and Kimberly Klacik was in a war and they had beef with each other. I had heard about it earlier, but it got pretty bad. So I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. Probably going to go into more detail in this separate video about that. But it's always sad to watch the infighting. And this one got really bad and personal and silly on both their parts. And also I want to talk about President Biden and this push for vaccinations. And they're talking about going door to door. Yep, door to door. But before we jump into it, if you guys would be so kind, go ahead and share. Make sure if you're on Facebook or YouTube or wherever that you're liking the page, that you're subscribing, especially on YouTube, it's subscribing. I'm pretty new to that page. I'm not new to YouTube, but my Black Tea page is new to YouTube. So the faster you guys subscribe, that opens me up to other sort of benefits. So I appreciate you guys sharing the word, spreading the word, and helping me grow here. I want to thank Brighter Michigan PAC for sponsoring today. I enjoy using the facilities. They're good people. I'm excited to be with them, supporting the veterans later on this month. I'll be at the event live streaming from their page. So make sure that you follow me and that you like them. We're going to do some marvelous things together. But if you would like to support Black Tea News, you can go to blacktnews.com and you can donate there yourself, or you can also do so via PayPal or do it via Cash App. There are, costs associated to what I do, and I appreciate everyone who's willing to support to help grow what we do here. I think what we're doing here is extraordinarily important, especially talking about a lot of these. I don't know if everyone's getting kind of bored with all the racial stuff, but they're driving this stuff to cause division, and it can ultimately lead to taking our country into a very dark place. So I ask that you be patient and that you alert your neighbors, alert your friends. And today, I'm going to make the case, I don't think you should have your kids in public schools. But everyone has to do what's best for them. But I don't have any kids, but I can tell you, there's no way that I would feel like appropriate at all to send kids to public schools. And I have an interesting tweet from a teacher that I'm going to share with you all later, about why I feel that you should really do your best to take your kids' education in your own hands. And I said I would review this movie yesterday, but I ran out of time. There was a movie with Chris Pratt, The Tomorrow War, and I'm not going to give too many like spoilery things about it, but I'll wait to the end to talk about it. Let's just say it's a thing. So anyway, let's get started. So first and foremost, I want to start off with this meme. And when I was thinking about memes, I went to a page of my dear friend, Jody Brown, and me sprinkling extremist content on your news feed, and with Salt Bay there. If you are unaware, Facebook now has it so there's these notifications that pop up and ask you, have you seen, or if your friends or someone spreading extremist content? And it's so funny what they consider to be extremist content. Like, do they spread conspiracy theories? And it's like, you can't just ban people or, I don't know, alert people because they're spreading conspiracy theories, because everything that people were saying about Russia was a conspiracy theory. Trump was not peeing on prostitutes. He was not the gay lover of Vladimir Putin. I know that one's just kind of a joke, but people said stuff like that all the time, but they acted like he was his puppet, and all kinds of stuff that he was installed, that they, I mean, people forget that we had to have recounts and stuff during the 2016 election, and people did not accept the results of that election. I love how people just like forget about that at their convenience. So there's a lot of different conspiracy theories that people believe. They even like to affirm the worldview of Russian hacking and stuff. They're like, all 17 intelligence agencies got together and they confirmed this. It's like, no, that's not what happened. Like 4 of them got together and said there was some hacking. And then you had like the rest of them like sign on to it or something. Like, not everyone got together and decided. Like, most people can't even name this, like the 17 intelligence like companies, but you think the DEA was just like, yep, Russian hacking. Like, all those groups, no, they didn't investigate that, but they all collectively agreed. But it's like, if it's true, why did you need all 17 to agree rather than just like the big 4? Like, that should have been like enough. The CIA, FBI, like that should have been like enough, right? But the point is that they wanted to drive home a narrative, and we had to do the whole Russia investigation, and we just turned out to be nonsense, just absolute utter nonsense. So they want to go after, I guess, the right's conspiracy theories, but not so much people on the left. Here's a crazy conspiracy theory that people had, that people who were against the movie Cuties on Netflix were QAnon. That's a conspiracy. But the mainstream media pushed that. The mainstream media, maybe we have to report them to Facebook for extremist content. But it's funny. It started off a trend. I had so many friends that got a Facebook frame of saying spreading extremist content to my friends or something. I should get one of those too, because I guess they would consider what I do extremist content too. I'm sure I'll get flagged eventually. But as always, thank you for the meme, my dear friend Jody. She can always come in the clutch. If anyone has any memes they would like to make it onto the program, you guys can always leave some in the comments, or you can hit me up on Twitter at TrueBlackT. That's my only handle that is different. Or you can post them other places on my Facebook page and so on, and I'm sure I will see them if you tag me in an obvious way. So that's a good one with Salt Bay. So first things first, I think I want to talk about this Kim and Candace thing really quick. So if you're not familiar with Kim Klacik, she ran in Elijah Cummings' district. She came pretty much the darling. Trump was like, they didn't do anything for Baltimore and so on. And she's like, that's right. And so she became sort of like the darling. during that election season. She raised $8 million for her race. Obviously, she was in a district that is just, it's like deep plus 30. So very much impossible for a Republican to win. But I suppose from what I hear, I don't know her. But from the outside, looks maybe like she's, did her darndest to make a difference, which you do need to make some sort of difference, at least a little bit. But she now has her own PAC where she's supposed to be helping other candidates. And she's the one who had the viral video of the walking in Baltimore with the high-heeled shoes. Other people started copying it. Benny Johnson, I believe, made the ad. And as soon as he made it for her, and he has a huge following. So by the time he shared it, that's a huge starting point to going viral. So much so that other people's kind of literally copied the ad. There are people who literally copied it. And then there are people who just copied it. The kind of the same style. And so of course everyone knows who Candace Owens is. She's been since 2016, I guess, or maybe I think 2016, really rose to stardom. And now she has a show on the Daily Wire called Candace. So Candace Owens spoke out against Juneteenth. And so did Charlie Kirk. I have talked about this before. And I didn't agree with their take. And in general, I don't think that they'd be against Juneteenth, because if Trump was still president and made it, he was trying to make it a national thing. He talked about it was part of the Platinum Plan, correct? And so if he had a day and they were all like, did Juneteenth announced national holiday, I think they would have been at the White House being cheering on and whatever. But the issue with Juneteenth, at least on the surface level, that I think from assessing their tweets about it, is that in other people too, not just them, and people I have had conversations and highly respect, their opinion is that the left is obviously using it to divide America, and they want people to look to it, specifically Black people, to hate Independence Day on July 4th and look toward Juneteenth being the real Independence Day. And that's not a conspiracy. They named the bill to pass it, Biden them, they named it the Independence Day or something, Juneteenth. So it was pretty obvious. And I knew people last year who had that attitude of, I don't want to celebrate Independence Day. I'm sure they took that day off in the time and a half though. But but they wanted to, celebrate Juneteenth instead. So that is a sentiment, and it's pretty obvious. That the left doesn't want you to respect the flag. Like the flag, I talked yesterday about a poll that came out that 64% of young Americans aren't proud of their country. They want to destroy things that are supposed to unify us, and this is just a further way to sow division. No bones about that. I totally agree with that. My issue is that well, in Texas, they've been celebrating Juneteenth for a long time. It's already a holiday down there. And in Michigan, I've had several events where we've celebrated Juneteenth as Republicans, because I know we've considered to be a Republican Party because we are the party of abolitionists and we are the party who freed the slaves. And every time I'm in an event and I'm asked to say something about Juneteenth, I talk about history, and I do address the holiday, but I also address other civil rights things where I think we need to fight for the liberty of all Americans who are overlooked, and specifically with the unborn. I find a lot of parallels with the arguments with slavery and abortion. And I've talked about this on TikTok and other places, and I'd love to go into more detail with you guys on here at a later time. But I see the parallels, and I talked yesterday a little bit about Frederick Douglass's speech that he gave on 4th of July in 1852 that talked about what is 4th of July to a slave. There's some context there. It happened in 1852. But when I read that speech, he seemed like, I always admired him, but he seemed very relatable to me, because a lot his attitude and how he was addressing things seemed pretty similar to if I was in that situation giving a speech about the goodness of America. But I love and respect this country, but at the same time, we have this law that allows us to kill babies. So, there are ways that you can use the holiday to your advantage, that platform to your advantage, especially since they like to list Republicans freed the slaves. Republicans did so it's a party literally about Republicans freeing the slaves and that effort there. So I think it's another platform. And not Michael Walsh, Michael Knowles has basically said you can't game the leftists with this. But and maybe he's right, but I don't understand why people want to surrender the ground when you can stand there and fight. So my opinion is, I was already here, so if y'all want to brawl and try to take this from me, we're gonna fight. With a war of ideas and ideology. But I'm not just going to mark this as a quarantine zone and let you have it. Is my thinking behind it. So anyway, Candace listed some things. Said some things about her not liking Juneteenth, and she said that Black Americans were brainwashed. We got to stop being brainwashed. And Kim responded, well, there's a lot of Black Americans who aren't brainwashed, and we understand that issues aren't of racism, but there's classism issues. And then she went a little she came for Candace and said, and you know that if you worked on the ground. And if you're going to come for Candace, you got to be ready when Candace strikes back. Now, I've heard people say, I don't know Candace. I've never met her. I have heard people have those complaints. I'm not going to say that I believe they're all valid or anything like that, but that is a sentiment that people have had. Was that appropriate or had anything to do with anything of Kim retweeting that and saying that then? I don't know. It just kind of looked like she was looking for an opportunity to jump on her to me. But then it just evolved to back and forth. A lot of these tweets were deleted and they were messaging each other. And then Candace decided to do a deep dive. And so I had heard about their beef a little bit ago. But then someone called me yesterday and was like, did you know that Candace Owens made a 45-minute video about Kim? So I watched the whole thing. And then first I heard about what the video was about. Then I watched Kim's response. And then I watched Candace's video about Kim. So there were some things in Candace and Kim's past that Candace pointed out that, to my knowledge, appear to be true, or true-ish at least, that she had a past with stripping. And Candace made a point that if you're going to talk about family values and if you're going to come from that, you should have at least been upfront about that. And I see the point there. But when Candace starts off the video, she talks about how a lot of things are this is so important. If you're conservative, you got to watch this. And she kind of keeps talking about how she tried to handle all this privately. And I don't know. It seems the whole beef it seems really, really silly. But then she goes into her records, her FEC records, and she starts pointing out things where this could be money laundering and all this other stuff. Now, when she got into that, a lot of campaign people were like, Candace kind of revealed how much she doesn't know about that process. Candace said stuff like, oh, look how much more money she spent toward the end of her election. Yeah, people, if they have money, they will definitely spend toward the end of the election with canvassing. And then she said, acted like it was a big red flag because she had a Democrat hired to help her with the canvassing. She's in a D+30 district, so why wouldn't you have a Democrat do that? So the beef was really interesting. I wish it wouldn't have happened, obviously. I think if Candace was that concerned, I think maybe she should have just referred it to the police if she did think something was going on. But listening to that and listening to Kim's explanations and knowing how much, media and money that media Kim was getting and how much money she was getting, I think there would have been, if there was smoke there, I think the fire would have already been had. And I think she probably is just swinging in the dark there as far as those things. So I don't know if you guys knew about it, but a couple people brought it to my, I knew about it. I didn't realize how much worse it had got. And so I know I would like to think that we could handle these grievances a bit more mature than what happened. And but they don't have to like each other, and we don't always have to all agree. But I just thought there's a little up to date on what's going on. A little up to date what's going on right there. So anyway, back to the news. Trump is suing the companies, Facebook and so on. So let's play a clip of what happened today. I'm not going to spend long on this, but I just thought you guys should know.
Some other news for you. Former President Donald Trump, he is suing several social media platforms and their CEOs. Earlier today, Mr. Trump announced that he's filed a class action lawsuit against Facebook, Twitter, and Google. Both social media giants banned the former president, citing safety concerns in the wake of the January 6th insurrection. But the former president argues that he and other conservative voices have been censored by biased policies.
Today, in conjunction with the America First Policy Institute, I'm filing as the lead class representative a major class action lawsuit against the big tech giants, including Facebook, Google, and Twitter, as well as their CEOs, Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, and Jack Dorsey. 3 real nice guys. We're asking the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida to order an immediate halt to social media companies' illegal, shameful censorship of the American people, and that's exactly what they are doing. We're demanding an end to the shadow banning, a stop to the silencing, and a stop to the blacklisting, banishing, and canceling that you know so well.
So Twitter banned Mr. Trump permanently, while Facebook's oversight board suspended him for 2 years. Facebook says that it will only reinstate him if experts say that the risk of violence incited by his online presence is low enough.
Yeah, so Facebook, Twitter, obviously it was a political hit. The reasons why Twitter, their breakdown of why they got rid of Trump was really, really silly. The specific tweets that he tweeted, like I already talked earlier about one where he was going to say, I'm not going to the inauguration. And they're like, well, this could have signaled people to go attack Joe Biden. And it's like, I don't know if anyone was thinking that, but you put that out there. And in Facebook, they did have a committee where they were supposed to decide whether or not he was going to be banned permanently, whatever, and they just basically passed down the buck and so on. And there's just a lot of inconsistencies. But we do know that these tech companies, obviously, they blacklist, hinder conservatives. And I talked a little bit about TikTok the other day, for example. It's very obvious that they pick and choose who they want to pick on. And friend of mine with a huge account, this is Savvy. She's been on my show before. I'm sure you've probably seen her. She had a viral video talking about Alyssa Milano, and she's been on Fox now, talking about like reparations and other stuff, because that was another viral video she did. And they banned her account, and people like en masse we assembled together. And we emailed, messaged, stitched her videos on her new account and fought to get it back. And when she got a hold of someone, they were like, give us 48 hours. And it didn't even take 48 hours, but they reinstated her. They actually flagged a video I did of a duet where I showed her video. Like, a duet is when you take someone else's video and then you're like, they're on one side and you're on the other. And I was just like watching her as she explained stuff. And they ended up getting rid of that video. And then they flagged me for a community violation because that video didn't exist anymore. And I'm like, why did you guys get rid of that video? And why should I be punished? Like, how was I supposed to know you guys were going to flag this video? It's not like I did it on purpose. So I'm like, I don't know if that goes against my account or not. But she could talk about people, but she was very soft and way more considerate and kind than myself or other Black conservatives. So I'm like, if they're coming for her, they can come for anyone. But there's sometimes these groups, if you say certain things that they don't like, they'll get like a mass wave of people to report you, and then your account could be gone. And obviously she had a mass outpouring of people who are willing to protect her and fight for her. But there's a lot of people who lose their account and they just have to start over from scratch. And I know like a lot of people who had to do it. Like, it's a badge of honor to have multiple accounts on TikTok. And I don't want that to happen, but I do have a backup. But at the same time, they'll keep up videos of like people dancing, saying, I don't like white people. Even though those things get mass reported too, and it's obviously hate speech. So they really pick and choose. And people who criticized Trump, they'll say he was president. Obviously, maybe he could have done more in office than tweeting and just complaining about it. But now him and his group and his legal group, they're going to sue, and we'll see what happens. He loves to sue people. Doesn't mean that they always win, but it is obvious that there's bias. I just, but they do have protection. So we'll see what they come up with. Something also in the news, Joe Biden they're talking about going door to door to make sure that people get a vaccine. So let's check that out.
In today's briefing, we discussed how our administration is going to devote the remainder of the summer to a special focus on 5 ways to make gains in getting those of you who are unvaccinated vaccinated. Because here's the deal. We are continuing to wind down the mass vaccination sites that did so much in the spring to rapidly vaccinate those eager to get their first shot, and their second shot for that matter, if they needed a second. Now we need to go to community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood, and oftentimes door to door, literally knocking on doors, to get help to the remaining people.
So Joe Biden and them and his administration, Jen Psaki, also like confirmed this. Like, they are literally talking about going door to door to make sure that people have their vaccination. Now, I was talking to my sister earlier about this, and she's like, I don't think they're gonna just go door to door like randomly to like people who they don't think, like, they'll probably go to targeted Democrats who they think will probably legal likely to do it if they harass them. But here's the crazy thing. At this point of time, I don't think people are not getting it because of the fact that they don't have access to it. And so here's another video with him talking about access.
Second, my team is going to place renewed emphasis on getting the vaccines to more and more family doctors and healthcare providers, so more Americans can get this shot at their doctor's office from the folks that they know and they trust the most. Third thing we're going to do. We're going to step up efforts to get vaccines to your family doctors and other doctors who serve younger people, so that adolescents ages 12 to 18 can get vaccinated, and as they go for back-to-school checkups or getting ready for the physicals they need for fall sports. Fourth, we're also intensifying our efforts to meet people where they are, outside of their neighborhoods, pharmacies, and doctor's office. This includes continuing to work with employers to make vaccination shots available at work, on the work site if possible, or give their employees paid time off to get vaccinated in a nearby facility. And fifth and finally, we're sending out more mobile clinic units out there to help people at special events, summer festivals, sporting events, as well as places of worship wherever we can find.
So they're saying mobile places, your churches, your doctor's office, your employers will pay you to take time off to go and get your the vaccine. Like, at this point, do you think there's anyone who does not have it that wants it? Like, there's been a lot of access. Obviously, it's free. You know, we in Michigan, you know, we had a bunch that was about to expire. Canada's like, can we have it? They were trying to, before it expires. There's a lot of people who get the first shot, they don't like how it feels, so they're not going to get the second shot. There's been reports that have come out, like he's talking about making sure that kids have it, young kids, like, you know, 12 through 18 or whatever. But there's reports coming out that people are having heart issues, and they're still researching that. And it's people, you have to make whatever decision is right for you, right for your family. If you're an elderly person, if you're someone with, you know, pre-existing conditions, you know, including like if you have a young child, like I understand that. I get it, but if you are a relatively young and healthy person, I don't, if you make a calculated risk that you don't want to inject this into your body, I think that's a wise choice. But you have to do what's right for you, whatever you decide. But all this pestering from the Biden administration about it, so much so that they're going to knock on your door, you know, have it at your job site, at your schools, at your churches. The demand just isn't there. And so now they're talking about that there's a Delta variant, and the Hill put out a story like the vaccine isn't strong enough against the Delta variant, which I don't think there's evidence for that. Like that is going to be like a big threat, but they want people to be scared again, and maybe they want to scare people so much so that they will go get the vaccine, but at the same time they're undermining the vaccine. So we're at a really weird, odd place with that in our country, and I personally am not going to get it. And I the more they push, especially with people who want to do like mandatory vaccines, like you can't go to work, like at Ford, Henry Ford, they said if you work here, any contractors, like anyone, like you cannot work here unless you get the vaccine. When people push up with that sort of authoritative measure, that makes me want to push back harder. So I don't like it. I don't like it. In my attitude is it's not that I'm not an anti-vaxxer in the sense that I'm just like suspicious and looking up all the ingredients and all that kind of stuff. I know people who do that for sure. Many of them have like this page. I'm not like that, but I guess technically you would call me an anti-vaxxer because I'm not for forced vaccinations. I'm not for forced vaccinations because I believe informed consent is extraordinarily important. And if we're just supposed to believe that the government cares about us so much that they wouldn't hurt us like that, I would like to be optimistic and think that that's not the case, regardless. But one thing you do have to remember, you don't even have to look at the past. You don't even have to go as far back as the Tuskegee experiments. You don't have to go back to forced vaccination. You don't have to do it. You don't have to go that far. You don't have to go back to like Holocaust or people experimenting on prisoners or anything like that. You don't have to go back that far. Just think about the fact today that we all know that life in the womb starts at like conception, basically, but we make it all relative and we ignore that a child in the womb is a baby for political reasons. If people can do that, I don't understand why you would have that much trust in the government about what to stick in your arm. I'm not telling you not to get it, but if you just have a blind obedience because the government said so, that's not wise. That's not wise. So them going door to door, asking if you have the vaccine, seeing if you have the vaccine. I mean, I guess when they come to the door, maybe I'll take that as my opportunity to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. But I'm not getting the vaccine. I'm not. You can. I don't begrudge you if you do. I seriously don't. That is your decision. But it needs to be your decision. They need to have your consent. And not consent as in you were forced into because you wouldn't be able to have a job and feed your family that's sick. Especially since it's available for everyone and everyone can have it if they want it, at least in this country. Like, they're doing all these measures to pressure you. It's not because people don't have access. It's not because like they've done a good job as far as delivering it. Like on most states, like Florida, other places, like they just knocked it out the park. And so now at this point, they can't get the numbers as high as they would like because there's people who just don't want to do that, and they're gonna have to overcome that with an educational gap or whatever and trust. But they undermined the vaccine a lot in the media in order to keep the pandemic going, to keep the control going. They undermined the vaccine when Trump was president because they wanted to keep chaos and didn't want anyone to be optimistic about the future, what could happen, because Trump needed to lose at all costs. So they have a credibility issue to work through. And I don't think they're going to be able to meet it. They're going to have to twist people's arms. So if you got it, don't worry about it because you're protected. And everyone else assumes the risk and they'll live with whatever they decide. I know I will. Or I won't. Whatever the Lord decides, I guess, in my body, my immune system, which it seems okay, but I'm not going to, like, look at me. I'm not going to say I'm, like, in the best shape of my life, but we all assume the risk. So let's move on to, like, the meat of the story. Critical race theory. So there's this thing where people keep trying to say that teachers aren't teaching it in school. At the same time, people are offended that we're banning it from school. And it's not only like, it's not just people on the right who don't like this, by the way. There's people on the left who, not like left, like leftist, but just like, there's some Democrat parents who are concerned. I'll put it that way. It's not just a Republican issue. It's largely being pushed by Republicans and conservatives. But there's people who are Democrats who care about this issue. There are some conservatives that have spoken out against the banning of it. I referenced this yesterday, but David French got together with some people and wrote a piece together saying that critical race theory shouldn't be banned, and their reasoning was like free speech, free market enterprise kind of stuff, and they thought the solutions was to offer a better curriculum and then like sue the government through civil rights issues and stuff. But it takes a while to sue people, and I don't know why you want the parents to have to go through all of that trouble, all of that headache, and all of that heartache. And also, Trump tried to push a better curriculum because to combat the 1619 project, they had the 1776 project or whatever it was called. And then Biden just came in and scrapped all that. And the media acted like that was a racist sort of ideology and teaching. And it was no such thing. It was no such thing. But they don't want solutions. They want their indoctrination. So the teachers unions are speaking out. If we made a deal with the teachers unions and said, hey, it's okay, we can teach it, but it has to be like an elective class in high school, like you can take in like 11th, 10th grade, do you think that the teachers unions would be like, okay, sure, that sounds like a great idea? Or would they be upset? They would still be upset. And so CNN had a remarkable segment about critical race theory. I'm going to end up doing a full react video to this because it's just utterly amazing. But I'm going to play like 3 clips for you guys. That's just really, like I said, it's amazing. So I'm going to play the first one. We will go from there.
The president of the second largest teachers union is vowing to defend educators who get in trouble for teaching, quote, honest history. In a speech Tuesday, Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, addressed the controversy surrounding critical race theory, which examines U.S. history through the lens of systemic racism. Republican politicians have been framing this theory as a threat to American children, and legislators in more than 12 states have proposed bills to ban it. Weingarten says her union is prepared to stand up for any member who is punished for teaching lessons on race and racism. CNN's Ellie Reeves spoke with a teacher who uses critical race theory and looked at how backlash to this framework has exploded. So, Ellie, do these vocal opponents of critical race theory actually understand fully what it is?
No. And why should they? It's an academic theory mostly taught at the grad student level. But what they think it means is teaching white kids that all white people are bad and racist. And so, of course, they're afraid of that.
She sounds so concerned. Of course they're afraid of that. She doesn't even sound like genuine about the concerns. But so they're saying, it's not being taught in schools, of course, and so on. So and so parents are afraid because they're saying that it's teaching white people to be evil, that they're evil and racist and so on. And they're like, that's just silly. We're not teaching that. So let's go on.
There are thousands of parents all over the U.S. of all races who have been speaking out against CRT, and rightfully so. These are my babies, not yours. If you are embarrassed or ashamed of your skin color, that's your issue, not mine nor my children.
This is a school board meeting in a suburb of Philadelphia, where a small group of very vocal parents are speaking out against critical race theory, or CRT.
We do not want our children to be taught that America is systemically racist.
600,000 people died in the Civil War to end racism and slavery. Don't rewrite factual history or indoctrinate, just present the facts.
In the wake of protests of the murder of George Floyd, Republican politicians have been hyping critical race theory as a threat to the impressionable minds of America's children.
Critical race theory says every white person is a racist. Critical race theory says America is fundamentally racist and irredeemably racist.
So did you notice they talked about, since George Floyd, in the protest and the uprising of that, these parents start speaking out against critical race theory. So they're doing this setup like George Floyd. This was a great thing that we were talking about racism and addressing these issues. And now there's a white lash, as like Van Jones put it. That was like for like Trump winning the election, but I'll just use that phrase again. Now there's like a white lash of all these white parents afraid of critical race theory and learning like accurate history. And they want to address all the crimes and the sins of their ancestors. And so it's just like so ridiculous that they brought up George Floyd and then complain about these parents and the critical race theory and these politicians as if that's a setup. Like that's the only choice. Like you can stand up for racial justice and critical race theory, or you can be against like one or the other. Like it's just ridiculous how they frame it. So here's the next part. So that they've said we're not teaching critical race theory in schools, and it's not teaching that white people are evil and so on in America, to hate America, and like that's gaslighting. That's what they're claiming. So let's go on to the next part.
We wanted to meet the actual people working with actual kids in actual schools. So we talked to Keziah Ridgway, who teaches high school African American history and discusses CRT in her anthropology class.
Can I just start with a very simple, what is critical race theory?
Yes, critical race theory is not being taught in schools. It is a theory, it is a lens by which to view history and the way that law and race kind of overlaps and connects in society. Can it influence the way that some teachers teach? Yeah, but that's a good thing, right? Because race and racism is literally the building blocks of this country. So how can you not talk about it?
Critical race theory is an academic framework that says racial inequality is perpetuated by the racism embedded in America's laws, not by individual bigotry. But relentless propaganda from some conservatives has created a panic that white people, and especially white children, are under attack.
Critical race theory is basically teaching people to hate our country.
Schools are embracing this ideology and forcing white students and white teachers to be ashamed of their own skin color.
It's not critical race theory, it's racism.
These are systemic things. Ignoring it perpetuates the problem. By acknowledging it, we can find solutions and we can address the problems and the inequality that exists in our country. And so I think teaching it this way actually does the opposite of what these people say it does.
Are you teaching children to hate America?
No, I'm teaching children to question America. And that's what makes a good patriot.
Don't force on our kids a particular worldview. Taking a white brush and painting this country as structurally racist, it's insane.
Why is it insane though? I mean,
because it's a lie.
Yeah, it's insane because it's a lie. So so they're saying we're not teaching it in school. So they go to someone who's actually like an African American history teacher and can explain critical race theory. And so she says it's not being taught in our schools, but it's a worldview, how you view the world and history and so on. And she says, can it influence people? Yes, but that's a good thing. So let's just assume that this woman who teaches African American history has been taught critical race theory and has been taught this worldview, this lens on how to look at history. And now she's teaching other people how to view American history through her biased lens. And so now they're saying that critical race theory is not about individual bigotry. So we're not saying that your white kid is necessarily evil, but we're saying or that all white people are, that it's about all of your collective or your individual bigotry. But as a collective, we know every single system of America is rooted in racism. But who built those systems? They would say white people built them, right? Like they believe critical race theory. It teaches not to that you can't see the world without color. That racism, it's the air we breathe. It's every part of life. It's not something simple that can be fought. That we have inherent bias and all these different things. So to pretend that they're not teaching kids that they're racist or hateful is silly. It's just ridiculous. And so we're saying, are you teaching people to hate America? She says, I'm teaching people to question America. What are you teaching about how to question them? And if we're talking, like they keep saying, like, we just want to teach accurate history. We want to teach accurate history. But you don't want to teach people that this happened, like dates and times and events, right? You want to teach about people how to feel about those dates, those times, and those events. Like she said, it's a worldview. Are you going to walk into a class like as in the 4th grade, and is it going to say on the board, critical race theory 101? No, that's not what's going to happen. But if you open up a textbook and your teacher starts harping about America is racist and it's evil, and the 3/5 compromises because people thought that black people were everybody just thought you were so terrible, when the truth is that the 3/5 compromise was because the southern states wanted black bodies, so they wanted more power, and the people in the north were like, we can't allow these people to count, because they didn't want to give black people citizenship, but they wanted to count them for the population. And so they had to reach the compromise of the 3/5, and that wasn't about just saying they were less than subhuman, but you have to you can teach the nuances of history, but they don't even want to teach you any sort of nuance about it. They want you to believe that everything is racist, everything is evil. I talked about the speech that Frederick Douglass gave on 4th of July. No, I'm sorry, it was the 5th of July, because he had enough respect not to give it on the 4th of July, unlike all these other people who decide to trash our country on our Independence Day. He waited to the 5th. And he talked, and they quote this about what is Independence Day to a slave, and as if like he hated the Constitution, hated the founding fathers, and thought it was a bad holiday. None of that is true. If you actually read the speech, none of that is true. But they don't want to teach people that he respected the founding fathers, that he respected the Constitution. He stood up them in a way that modern people who claim to be like conservatives, that are black activists that I know, don't even defend it. It was amazing reading it, actually. You have to read it. It will take you some time, but you have to do it. You don't have to do it, but you should do it. They don't want to teach you the nuances of history. They want to teach you how to feel about it. They want to teach you literally that everything about it is evil. And Ben Shapiro made a good point. Like when you talk to they try to say that the Constitution, all this stuff was evil, but the founding fathers are evil and they're hypocrites. But it's like they can't be hypocrites if what they wrote was in line with their hateful ideology. So maybe Is it just the case that these documents were great, were fantastic, and people just didn't quite live up to it on an individual level? And that's why they're hypocrites, which they were. Many of them were. So it's hilarious to me. It's hilarious to me that CNN could produce that story and think, yep, we're going to air that. As if that doesn't affirm what we all think, that you want to indoctrinate kids. So like I named this like teach your kids, protect your kids, because I'm concerned. I'm deeply concerned about the way that they lie to people, the way they try to divide us. And I had teachers in high school that were liberal, obviously. I had a teacher. He was also the drama teacher, but he taught I don't think it was US history. Maybe it was. But it was like in social studies type or whatever. And he would write every day on the board how many people were dying in Iraq. And he was a veteran who went to Nam, lost his finger. Very bitter about like America. I don't think he would say that, but that was like the vibe I got. But he would every day he'd write that on the board. I'm just like, I'm just trying to learn some like history, man. And there's some people don't feel comfortable challenging teachers. There's people who don't feel comfortable doing that in college, and in college they will flunk you. They will flunk you. But so there's definitely people who in high school that if you're trying to indoctrinate them with certain stuff that people aren't going to question you. It's amazing when you argue or you debate rather, I guess, with young people who are in college, and they'll say something like, my professor said this. Like I remember a couple years ago, I was debating with someone on Twitter about the party switch myth. And I'm just like, look at dates and times and the people who voted this stuff in. And they're just like, well, my professor said this. I'm like, sweetheart, your professor is biased. And just because your professor told you something does not mean that it's true. Like, you have to think for yourself. But there's some kids who just like, my professor said this and that's what I believe. And they'll indoctrinate their kids over like what, and then they'll believe them over what parents and stuff. Because a lot of them, especially when they leave, they spend more time with them than they'll spend at home. So, can you imagine people having this worldview that they're injecting on your kids in, elementary, middle school, high school? I would push back time to time, but I was far and few between. It is not because I think the rest of the class were a bunch of liberals. There's just a lot of kids who don't want to push back or don't know how to push back or afraid to push back on their teachers, on the ones who are giving them grades. I remember one time I was talking about foreign aid. And I remember my dad always complaining about how much money we would give to people, especially since it was to people who hated America or preached death to America and other stuff. And so, I had said something like that in class, and we talked a little bit about, giving and welfare and other kind of stuff. And then the teacher rebutted. I can't remember exactly what they said. And then I said something like, but if you give a man to fish, you feed him for a day. If you give him, if you teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for a lifetime. I quoted that proverb. And he was like, Miss Barr finally said something that wasn't about the Bible. Like, points to you, Miss Barr, which I did not like bring the Bible into every authoritative like debate. I don't believe I did that, but everyone knew I was a Christian. It was like apparent. But anyway, I would push back on him. And there was another kid in my class who was also a Christian and conservative who would push back. They have a lovely family of like 8 kids now. They're just like baby making machines. And he serves in the military. Thank you for your service. If you're watching, Mr. I won't say your name, but you know who you are. but we'd push back, but other people wouldn't push back. And then I had one teacher in the 9th grade who was really, really into pushing his worldview. And I think I was I felt like I was the only one in the class who would push back. So I just can't imagine what they think will happen or be the positive if you have teachers like the one that CNN featured teaching through that lens, that worldview of everything is racist, every system, every part of like America has some sort of racist root to it. They don't. Why do we teach history? Why do we teach it? Like philosophically, like why do we do it? You know that saying, like if we, if you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it. That's why we say with like the Holocaust, never forget, because we don't want something that horrific to happen again. Like why do people who come from communist countries like repeat their experiences and warn people about the dangers of like socialism and so on, or communism? Because they don't want it to repeat somewhere else. And people who tend to push this stuff tend to be ignorant of history and or don't have those lived experiences, and they want to keep pushing for utopia. Like, well, we can do it right this time. It's like, no, but you didn't live it. You're not close enough to someone who experienced it. So we talk about history so we can be inspired from it, learn from it, look how far we've come. I for those of you who don't know, I write books. I'm working on this really good political book that I hope to just bust out relatively like in a fast time, because I think it'll be really good and you guys will enjoy it. But I write a lot of fiction books. And one is a historical fiction book that took place in the Civil War. It's kind of like Roots, not Roots. If you saw the movie Harriet and like combine it with like X-Men or something like that, that's kind of what it's like, and like the gist of it without going into the background. It's on Amazon, you should get it. So, but the more I would research about history, even like the dirty things, the things that are heartbreaking, I would just be in awe of the fact of how people persevere through it. And I will look through it, and I guess my worldview, my lens, is optimism. So when I look at history, I don't look at all the evil systems. I look at all the progress we've made, and I have so much admiration for the people who endured hardships, but still pressed forward, and the people who still obtained their optimism and continued to fight for a better world. I have a saying, don't be better, don't be bitter. So I think that's what a lot of people had their outlook. That was what their outlook was, like Frederick Douglass made that speech, but he also made another one after the Civil War that was like, don't hold animosity in your hearts. Like, we need to move on and progress forward. And that was people's attitudes after the Civil War. It wasn't like, let's drag everybody down. I find it so inspirational that like that so many people fought so valiantly to just restore the world rather than trying to keep everyone beaten down in the past. But we don't follow that example today. Like, we want to beat people who aren't even there, who are dead, either forgiven and redeemed by the Lord or burning in hell. Like, like they've met their maker, they faced their judgment, yet we are so adamant about drudging up the past to feel what? Generational trauma? I would say go get therapy for that if you legit have that. But apparently trauma therapists are crazy, and I played like one yesterday. The name of my book, thank you for asking. I don't want to get off topic, but since the comment rolled up, that's the series. That's my series. The two right there that I have out. That's my historical fiction fantasy book. The Color of God's Eyes and Song of the Devil Lips. And you can go to ninjadustpublishing.com to check that out and all my other books. The Ninja Dust Pub. That's why my Cash App is Ninja Dust Pub, because that's the name of that I have. I've had for a while, because Ninja Dust Publishing is my website. So that's my series. Thank you very much for asking. I appreciate that. You can get it on Kindle Unlimited, Kindle, or you can buy the paperbacks. So anyway, when I research these stories, like look at someone like George Washington Carver, who was born into slavery, and then the people who had him, they adopted him later. He went and, learned his education and brought everything back for agriculture to replenish the soil of the South that had just been ravaged by like the cotton. And he saved them, like to help revitalize their economy and stuff. So, and then he just taught about like, if like God is the answer to everything, to all the ills, to all of the way that we divide each other, coming together to be brothers and sisters in Christ. And I know not everybody watching this is religious, but that's what people believe, that there were common things that could bring us together. And even if you're not a Christian, there are principles in there. You just like love your neighbor, treat people the way you want to be treated. The concept of sacrifice over self, forgiveness, redemption. If those are things that we just apply to the world, we'd be at such a better place. So we learn history. I would like to think mostly so we don't want to be ignorant, but we don't want to be ignorant so we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. But they don't want that to happen. They want us to look at history to feel bitter about it. They want us to question everything about the world around us. Like civil rights was about moving things forward. Critical race theory is about dismantling every institution, painting shedding a light on everything, and assuming that everything is racism, that all the systems are racist, that racism is everywhere, that you can't escape it, and you can't necessarily fight it. And even if you chose to see the world without color, that is also racist. Ben Shapiro had a really good episode explaining critical race theory. And for anyone who wants to discredit him, like, oh, Ben Shapiro, it was developed in Harvard, and they said it is something that is like taught in law. And by the way, he did go to Harvard and studied law, and he does quote the actual people who made critical race theory. So there's that. So he had a really good episode on critical race theory. I can dive into it at some other time, kind of more in depth. But I do recommend that you go watch that episode when he covered it. I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it. But that CNN like video that I showed, if you're just now coming in, it was crazy. It was crazy. And I'm probably gonna film a react if I got time right after I'm done shooting this. So the problem isn't that your kids, like I said, they're not going to come into a classroom and see critical race theory on the board. But the problem is that these teachers, and a lot of these young teachers, have already been indoctrinated into that way of thinking. And it's not just critical race theory, it's intersectionalism, it's all this stuff about gender ideology and so on that they want to indoctrinate your kids with. And I've talked about this at length already, them integrating it in your schools, and not just their schools, their cartoons, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Blue's Clues, and Disney Plus, Kermit the Frog, doing things with drag queens, them claiming everything is LGBT, like even Bugs Bunny. I'm like, why did they put Bugs Bunny as being LGBT? And someone in the comments like, because he dresses up in like Dragon Will Kiss Umber Fudd. Like, he does that because there's like the comedy slapstick sort of ideology of this is a ridiculous thing, and I'm being a ridiculous person, so I'm going to kiss this man. That's like what's behind it. If anything, it's a little homophobic, not him being bisexual or something like that. But we just live in an insane world. I had a friend, and I think we've talked about this before, maybe a while ago, and I think I talked about this on my religious podcast, but she, Christina Caramo, she's running for Secretary of State in Michigan. She'll probably get the nomination, to be honest with you, but we'll see. A good friend of mine. She was on a board trying to determine what was going to be in your kids' curriculum as far as sex education. And she joined it because she didn't want them to do stuff too far. So this was like pre-pandemic, or maybe like during start of it, maybe. And in Michigan, sex education, the goal is to prevent pregnancy. So tell me why these people kept trying to sneak in gender ideology stuff. K through 12. I don't even know why K, like, they're addressing sex at all. But they're like through the whole span. And they kept trying to introduce like different sort of families and pansexual, like all these different ideologies. When the goal of sex education is supposed to be don't have babies. Like out of when you're in high school or as a teenager. Like that's the goal. So why is all this other stuff coming in? Why is it even like, and there are gay kids in school, obviously, but if the goal is to prevent pregnancy, why are you even teaching about gay sex? Because that's definitely not going to result in a pregnancy. So it's all about the ideology. It's all about the ideology. And so she would keep pushing. And so eventually, I don't know what ended up being adopted. She ended up homeschooling her girls, and kudos to her. And I think most people should try to homeschool their kids if you can. And there are a lot of people who obviously pulled their kids out and tried that themselves, and good on them. And I think that's what we should do if you can. But not everyone's in the position where they can do that, and I understand that. And not all public schools are bad. Not all teachers are bad. I graduated from a really good public school, I thought, at least when I went there. And it was rolled away from the school district I started from. And I can tell you, a good school district change can like alter your kid's life. It really can. It really can. It set me up on there's some people who I know like switch districts, and it set them up on just such a vast trajectory from where they could have been going, headed toward destruction, and they went to such a productive road because they switched school districts, atmosphere, and community, and so on. For me, it was a big academic trajectory change because these people were just on a different level. It opened up a lot of doors creatively for me. The atmosphere of just how people look toward their future was totally different. Like in my, school district where I grew up as a kid, they'd be like, people would like say things, admirable things like, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, or something like that. And or they'd also say like basketball players and beauticians and rappers and stuff like that. But, and people had dreams. It's great. But I noticed a difference because I moved like within 7th grade. A bit middle of the year, I was in like Pontiac schools, and then I went to like out in Holly. And these kids were like, I want to be a doctor, like I want to be a reconstructive surgeon. And to me, it just seemed like they thought their dreams were, I don't know, they had plans, they had specific goals and details and a way to get there. I talked about this yesterday, that I hate it when everyone was like trying to do all these apologies and stuff like that. Like I didn't need your pity because I'm a Black person. Like I just need an opportunity. And a lot of these kids just really need an opportunity. And so many people want to keep them trapped in bad schools or bad situations. I would really like if schools could be competitive. in Arizona, I believe my cousin told me that she could like take, I think 90% of her funds and fund different stuff for her kids. And the 90% was a compromise, and like 10% was still like goes to the public schools. And she wanted it all, actually. I thought the 10% was actually an okay compromise. Because part of me is sad that the school I went to as like an elementary and junior high, they don't exist anymore. That they're run down. Whether that's because of, not enough kids being there, because there were other options, or, or people moved to other places, or just corruption. I don't know all the reasons why those are shut down and they combine the kids, other than that made sense money-wise and population-wise. It makes me sad, driving down those abandoned buildings. I don't want to see like public school totally wiped out, especially if there's good schools. but they need to be competitive. And as long as you have these teachers unions who are going to push critical race theory and all this other garbage, they are a cancer to these teachers who love these kids, who just want to do their jobs, But there's so much ideology and money and power attached to it. And at the end of the day, I had some great teachers. I would hate to say, do your own thing, and you might miss out on all these great relationships that I had, these teachers that I saw. But at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for your kids. You got to do what's best for your kids. And whether it's taking them from one school district to another school district, whether it's taking them to a private school, which private school is not going to solve all your problems, because we've seen crazy stuff eking into private schools. Like there was that crazy video about kids touching themselves and enjoying it. That was at a private school. So just because you put your kid in a private school doesn't mean you need to be not attentive to what's going on. And you sure do need to be attentive. But you can definitely save a lot of drama if you homeschool. I remember a couple years ago, I was at work and I mentioned that I would want to homeschool my kids. And my boss was like, oh, I wouldn't want to do that because she felt like her kids are awesome and they'd be a benefit to society. And I sympathize with that position for sure, because when my dad was in school, the school was his mission field. Like he had one teacher who would let him take over class and he would like preach to the kids and talk about Bible prophecy and end times and other stuff like that. And he would pack out the classroom. Like he gave a passionate speech one time about how he was a 16-year-old virgin, and people laughed at him at first, but by the time he finished it, other men were jumping up in the classroom stating, you know, I'm a 15-year-old virgin, I'm a 16-year-old virgin, or I messed up one time, but after this, I'm not going to have sex until I get married. My dad made it his mission to minister to these kids. So as I'm a Christian, I definitely see the need to do that. So I think it's a delicate balance. It's something you got to pray about and really think about. But at the end of the day, I think it is really important how you protect your kids. And these people are gunning for them. They are gunning for them. I'm going to show you this tweet, these multiple tweets from a teacher in Colorado. I'm going on record now. At the end of the day, it's just my students and me in our classroom, and we will be discussing race, class, and gender in my history classes, regardless of what laws and policies people want to pass. Critical race theory is a component of everything I do. Common ground. I got to remove my logo for a second. Excuse me, because I can't see that. Common ground doesn't mean meeting in the middle. The only common ground that exists is what exists in the leftist beliefs, because conservative common ground leaves out people who are poor, BIPOC, by people of color, queer, with disabilities, etc. But our common ground includes the liberation for all. And we do so ground up, take over school boards, city councils, county commissioners, etc. So that's a teacher. That's a teacher admitting that they will not adhere to this. And by the way, there was an article that expressed that there's 5,000 teachers that said, we don't care, we're going to teach it regardless, that we want to teach critical race theory. Even though you have the media gaslighting, saying no one's teaching it in schools. They are determined to make you hate America. They are determined to not teach the nuance of history, to not teach anything in a progressive, like, look how far we've come. They want you to literally have wounds from things you didn't experience. You know, people talk about reparations and they say, well, we need them because of what happened it just kind of seems like revenge for me, honestly, when I hear people talk about it. But they'll say stuff like, well, slaves built this, my ancestors built this country, you've benefited off of X, Y, and Z. Yeah, and so did you. I don't like what happened in the past, but the truth is I'm here. And you can feel guilty for benefiting off of everything that happened in the past to get you to where you are. It's a reality and you had nothing to do with it. So I don't see the point of feeling guilty. But the people you're trying to burden with that guilt also had nothing to do with it. And they benefit, but so do you. Because you're here in America, in the land of the free, home of the brave. You can vote. You can speak freely, though nowadays maybe you don't feel like that's a safe thing to do. A lot of Americans don't. But you have liberty to worship how you want to worship, to associate with people how you want to associate. You have a lot of freedoms and liberty in America that are way more expansive than anything in every other country. When people say what's great about America, I know other people roll their eyes because we say liberty, freedom. In other places will go, we have freedom. Not like America. You're always welcome to leave if you don't like it. But it's so crazy that people talk about how awful this country is when we know we accept millions every year. People risk all sorts of, their life, their children to get here. And you whine and you complain over things that dead men did. And you obsess about it. And you look at it in dishonest ways to justify being angry. Over what? For what purpose? These people don't want us to learn history to make us learn from the past. They want us, they believe all these people were racist and they want us to be racist. That's what it is. That's why they want to teach a collective white identity, even though there's people who identify with different heritage, Irish, Italian, which these groups who came to America and immigrated here face their own sort of discrimination. Irish people were treated like garbage. Italian people were treated pretty bad. As a matter of fact, I learned this from Michael Knowles. I didn't know this, that Columbus Day, that happened to appease Italian Americans after some discrimination stuff that happened. And now they want to get rid of it because they hate Columbus. Even though Neil deGrasse Tyson, he did a very interesting video about why he thought Columbus, coming to America was like one of the most significant things that happened in history. I'll have to find it and play it for you guys one day. But do what's best for your kids, but whether it's keeping them in public school, private school, switching them to districts, or just homeschooling yourself. And if you're in that position where you can do that fine and easy, that's great. If you're in a position where you can help someone else make a good decision for their kids, please try to help them. Conservatives, there's a way that you can help someone else try to help your kids get in private school or something, or to a charter school, or help out with homeschooling. Even if there needs to be a group collective, it's a lone person teaching 5 kids. Just find a way to do that if you can. If you have to do it that way, do it. But don't leave these kids to the wolves, because they do not care or respect your. And it's not everybody. I had great teachers that I loved. Some that I could not stand, for sure. So, but like I said, these teachers unions are like a cancer, not like. Well, I guess I got to say like a cancer, because, and if I said just a cancer, it would still be metaphorical. They're not literally a cancer, but they're gonna drag our nation down for sure. And the way that they're fighting back is insane. Gaslighting, while still confirming everything we believe, all of our fears. It's obvious, totally obvious. So do what's right by their kids, because they're coming for them, and they're angry that you're fighting back. They're angry that they're your kids. Like the "it takes a village" thing. It sounds cute. It sounds cute, right? No, your kid doesn't belong to the community, the state, and the community, and all that stuff. You raise your kids how you believe is appropriate, and you need to fight for that. Last thing I want to talk about today is I'm going to quickly talk about this movie that Chris Pratt was in, because my sister was like, "You want to watch a movie?" And I hadn't sat down and watched a movie in a while, so I agreed. She wanted to spend some time with roommates and stuff. I'm very introverted, and I like to just go on my own and chill. But she's, she enjoys quality time and stuff. So we watched this film, and some of my other siblings and my mom watched this film, and so I thought maybe they enjoyed it. So I thought maybe it'd be a good movie. And there's all these critics who obviously hate it. And but the audience scores thought it was better than what the critics were giving it. So I really would like to just shove it to the critics. There's some times that movies are really good that they hate that I love, and I spent a lot of time online fighting for, advocating for, The Greatest Showman. I love that film. The critics didn't like it so much, but the audience rallied behind it, and it was the little movie that could. And then sometimes, I know they have a very highbrow opinion of things. Sometimes they don't like things because of the ideology behind it, but they'll stick it for something that's really, really bad, but because it has the right ideology, they'll be like, "Oh, it's 100%," even though the audience will give it a 8% or something like that. So, I think Chris Pratt, among the war of the Chris's, he's my favorite Chris, and that's Pine and Evans. Pine's fine. Chris Evans is my bottom. He's my bottom. He has really dumb ideas. He looked okay as Captain America, but they still could have cast someone better, in my opinion. He did okay. I like the films. They're okay anyway. Overall. So Chris Pratt did this movie, and I thought, could have speculated that maybe the critics didn't like it because, I don't know, he's a Christian. They come so hard for Chris Pratt. They got so mad because Chris Pratt had his son doing the Pledge of Allegiance, and Twitter came from him. And they're mad that he's Christian, oh, he must hate gays. And then everyone in Hollywood who knows him, loves him, will always stick up for him, even though he has religious beliefs. So it's very bizarre. But if I'm being honest about this movie, the Tomorrow War, it was trash, y'all. It was bad. It was so stupid. It was really dumb. I'm sorry if you liked it. There's dumb films that you can enjoy. I really liked Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I really enjoyed that movie. I obviously, very early on while I was watching it, actually, I guess before I went in the show, I accepted the premise. I decided that, of course, it wasn't going to make sense, and I embraced the weirdness of it. And at one point in the time, I turned to my friend and I said, "I choose to believe all of this is true." And I just kept watching Abraham Lincoln fight vampires. So I enjoyed that movie. So there's movies that are obviously not great that you enjoy. And there's people online who are like, "I enjoyed this movie," and it's fine if you just want to have a popcorn flick. You don't watch movies with The Rock because you're a physics major, right? You just watch it. My family just saw Fast 9, and we're just came home talking about how terrible, how it didn't make any sense, and how silly some things were, and how things that people were doing parody of they thought was just a joke, but it wasn't so much a joke. So there's silly things that we enjoy, but it was just dumb. It was just really dumb on a lot of levels. So and I don't want to break down the whole film in case you do want to watch it. But But from a military standpoint, it didn't make any sense. From the time travel stuff, it sometimes time travel gets on my nerves, and I feel like that there are things that don't make sense. They didn't go into a lot of details about it like a lot of time travel films will. Um, as a matter of fact, when they were like doing the scene, sort of like when the audience is asking questions, I mean, when the characters are asking questions for the purpose of the audience learning things about it, they kept it super vague and very easy to explain, as if they're explaining it to a child. But so I didn't think the time travel stuff didn't make sense, but how they thought of the time travel stuff didn't make sense. So like the plans that they came up to defeat the aliens and stuff was silly. The plans that they came up to with ended up being kind of useless. It was just a really silly film. They'd have people who are obviously important, crucial, too important to die, yet they would put them in situations where they could obviously die. But plot armor, I guess, would maybe keep them safe or something, but it's like, why would you put them in that position? So, but the funny thing, I was watching with my sister, and every time I'm like, this is stupid. Like, why would the government do this? Why this and that? She kept saying, this happened under like Obama or with Biden. Like, you really think they would do something smart? And I'm just like, there's a difference between like, I don't know, China's doing something sketchy and you know your son made deals with China, so you don't go after China because you have all these invested interests, versus like there are aliens that want to eat people. Like there's a difference. So she kept trying to stick up for the film. I'm just like, and I just looked at her, and then I looked back at the TV. I'm like, this movie's stupid, and it's just awful. Now, if like, I don't know, the ultimate, I don't know, thought process for the film and the meaning of it is our kids are totally ill-equipped to handle the future, and we the adults have to do something about it. And at the end of the day, what we really have to do is just punch the problems in the face. I guess there's a point there and a moral I can agree with, like as a society at large. But just like overall, the film is just like not great. And I won't go into more detail than that, like the overall premise, because I guess I didn't explain that. There are people who come from the future. They're fighting aliens, and they have exhausted their resources. Everyone's basically like dead, and they're like, we need your help to fight the aliens. We need your help to fight the aliens. So they start recruiting particular people. Most of them are older and so on, to go fight the aliens. And they don't tell them much about the aliens. They don't tell them anything about the aliens. They just know they're aliens. Like, they purposely don't tell them because they think it will scare people from signing up. They don't really train them. So of course there's only like a 30% survival rate when you don't train people. It was just not great. But if you like some Chris Pratt, you can go ahead, which I like Chris Pratt, and you want to go ahead and support him, you can do that. But it just wasn't a great movie. It was just really dumb on a lot of different levels, and I wish I could say something nice about it. I'm not a big disaster movie person. But to be honest, I'm not enjoying a lot of films right now. I'm just not. There's a little bit of climate change stuff in there, but it was like a blip on the, I guess it was integral to the plot, but it wasn't like a huge thing in the film. I just wanted to warn you. I don't really enjoy media too much right now. On a side note, and this will be the last thing I say before I close out, because we're almost at an hour and 30 minutes, but on the TV show Loki, I have not watched it because I've just decided I'm not going to say I'll never watch a Marvel thing again, but that's pretty much where I am right now. There was a file about Loki, and it said something about him being not, I don't know if it was bisexual or like pansexual or some kind of like got around sort of thing. And people were really excited, like, oh my gosh, Loki's queer. And Um, and I guess the thinking behind that is that he can shapeshift, so he can make love in all kinds of different ways. And the director said, "I'm bi, so that's why I did it." I wanted that to be a thing. I wanted that to be an integral part of who he is, I guess. And um, it's so interesting with all these people who are into the intersectionality stuff, where they think that is such an important part of their identity. And it's like, this character has so many other things that have made him up for all these years. You announcing something like on a blip of a paper to make that point across has nothing to do with the character that people have known and experienced for years, for more than a decade, that people beloved. So I understand that you're excited because you've adopted him into your world, your community. But that doesn't define him. And why is it so much that you think it has to define you? So much so that you have to incorporate everyone else into it and change stuff. Ripa, young Ripa on YouTube, he talks a lot about like comic books. He has a show called For Canon's Sake that I really enjoy. He talked about it yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I watched it yesterday. And he also talked about he talks about pop culture, doing stuff all the time. He mentioned how in the He-Man show that they're remaking, that was it Lord Grayskull, I think. I didn't watch He-Man. I watched the show that they had on Cartoon Network a couple of years ago. I guess that was more than a couple of years ago, but I watched that show, but I'm not deep into the He-Man lore. That was a little bit before my time. And so they made him black. And so a black at some event, a black viewer asked the question, like, why you are so focused on changing the races of other people other than creating new content and new characters? And then they answered, well, because you may not receive our new characters. So these people are just so lazy. They're just so lazy. So like we think black people are important, but we just want to do a hand-me-down. Because we don't have what it takes to make people interesting. And maybe it's because a lot of these new writers, they just don't know what makes a person other than who they sleep with and the color of their skin. Like, experiences can't define them, the relationships with people, like they have to what's the most important to these people is your race, is your gender, and who you sleep with. Seriously. And we're so much more than that. We are so much more than that. But that's the world we live in. I just thought I would add that before I say goodbye. Again, please go to blacktnews.com and visit my website and check out different merchandise that I have on the site that you guys may like or want to get for someone else, like this cool goat shirt. Still Team Trump anyway. And I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For, and other stuff. The book that I mentioned, you can check that out. I would love for you guys to, check it out. It is a historical fiction fantasy. I'm not going to say it's like the most accurate thing ever, but actually I'm going to start moving into the direction of, it's historical fiction, but also go into like alternate fiction too. Historical fiction. Just a little FYI. But there is an interracial relationship. There are like other love interests and stuff involved. There's a bit of a triangle, but cool little background. In my family history, we had a slave master's daughter who ran away to be with one of her father's slaves, and they sailed away. Started their own family, and then after her father passed, her siblings found her and said, we'll give you your part of the inheritance, but you have to leave your husband and your kids. And then she's like, you wouldn't even tell a dog to do something that heartless. And so she stuck up for her family, and they ended up giving them the inheritance. So, or at least her part of it or whatever. So they when they left, they settled in Metropolis. So I would say I was always destined to be a nerd. So when I was creating these characters in the story, and I knew I wanted, my protagonist to be a black female woman, I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I incorporated a little bit of, I don't know, that story that's personal to me and just obviously flip the genders of the story. So that's a little FYI on that background. If you want to check it out, I appreciate you guys doing that. If you guys would like to support blacktnews.com with a direct donation, you can do that at blacktnews.com/donate, or you can do so via the Cash App or the PayPal that's been going across the screen. I appreciate everyone who has helped, who has donated, who has shared. Make sure that you are sharing, that you're liking, that you are subscribing, and that you are hitting notification bells, because just because you subscribe doesn't mean you're getting the notification bells, which I find so silly, because I'll get notifications for things that I'm not even subscribed to, but they just assume that maybe I would watch. And sometimes they're right, but I'm just like, why do my fans have to hit notification bells? But you can send me things that are just maybe sort of related. Seems weird. Seems super weird. But that's how it works. So make sure you are subscribing, liking, and you're getting notifications. Thank you guys so much. And we'll be back tomorrow again to talk about news of the day, things that are interesting. Hopefully they will not do something else crazy concerning critical race theory that we'll have to talk about this again. But if it happens, it happens. Thank you guys for being a part of the conversation. I appreciate you guys so much. And I am totally about to do a react video to that whole CNN video. So look for that later. And